Welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now. I am your host, Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for being here with us. And no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate your support of the show. Before we dive into the program today, I want you to have fun here in the comments section. Rank these teams in the Eastern Conference. And where do you think the Philadelphia 76ers stand alongside the last 5 remaining teams in the Eastern Conference playoffs? Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Philadelphia 76ers, Milwaukee Bucks, and we'll throw the New York Knicks in there as well because it is a rival of Philadelphia. Rank these squads in the East heading into the 2023-2024 season. As for what we're breaking down on the show today, 76ers bold predictions for this upcoming season. We're going to have some fun with the show today, and let's dive into it. So bold prediction number 1. I think that James Harden is going to return to the Sixers. He's able to reconcile that relationship with Daryl Morey, which goes back a really long way. And their long-standing relationship is a big reason why Harden gets over that trade request and he ends up coming back. He sees that Patrick Beverley's having a good time in Philadelphia. He saw the quotes from Joel Embiid, PJ Tucker. They convince him to come back to try to chase that NBA championship, which inevitably the Sixers will not win because I don't think that Harden is a championship-level player. But you look at this relationship, right, between Harden and Morey. It goes all the way back to October of 2012. This will go down as one of the best trades in the history of the NBA when you factor in the player that the Beard became. That's when Daryl Morey made that trade for Harden in a deal between Houston and the Oklahoma City Thunder, in which Daryl Morey traded away the key piece in that trade to get Harden. It was Jeremy Lamb, the UConn legend. And then in 2017, James Harden signs what was at the time the richest deal ever in the history of the NBA. 5 years later, after Morey comes to Philadelphia, is running basketball operations, he remains patient with the Ben Simmons holdout, and he trades Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and some first-round picks for Harden to come to Philadelphia. And then in June of 2023, after Harden was great in Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston in that second round, they lose in Game 7 in a really ugly way to the Celtics. And then Harden was very unhappy with how Morey handled the pre-free agency process, keeping him and his camp, quote, in the dark. He asked for a trade, and that trade request, according to Ramona Shelburne, is still intact. With Harden, there are a lot of pros. Let's not slight a guy who is going to be a Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, who has been one of the best offensive players of this generation. He has had his fingerprints on the way that the game is played now on the offensive end of the floor, and he is a very good stat patter as a guy who can put the ball in the hoop, very good vision, very good rebounder, and he does impact the game of basketball at a very high level. Elite assist man, led the NBA in dimes last year with almost 11, career best assist-to-turnover ratio, runs the two-man game really well alongside Joel Embiid. Last year, 21 points per game, 44% from the field, 38.5% from three. You could tell he put in some work there, was finally healthy, coming off a couple of hamstring issues the last 2 years. That three-point number, the second best of his career. We talk about what he did in Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston. Very good, three-level scorer. But then there are obviously the concerns with Harden here and the cons. 33 years old, how will he age? He is not always in the best peak shape. He's way too inconsistent, especially when it comes down to the playoffs. No championship pedigree, and he's continued to come up short in some of these big spots when he's in the pressure cooker. And honestly, it looked as though he gave up in that Game 7 against the Celtics. Harden in Philly. It has certainly been a pretty interesting tenure, and I don't care what you say. Even with the Sixers' playoff failures, the trade of Ben Simmons for Harden, a massive win in the book for Daryl Morey because Ben Simmons hasn't played, Harden has, and he has been extremely productive. Year 1, 21 points per game. Year 2, 21 points per game. In the playoffs, though, you see those numbers do dip a little bit. Can Nick Nurse bring a better James Harden out, as well as Joel Embiid? Tobias Harris, if the Sixers run it back, you have to hope that the Sixers upgraded in coach from Doc Rivers, a.k.a. Glenn Rivers, to Nick Nurse. And if that's the case, maybe they can finally get over that second-round hurdle. Make sure you subscribe to the show for year-round Sixers coverage. We don't only just cover this team when the storylines are hot like they are here in NBA free agency. It's year-round Sixers coverage. On the docket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subscribe. Join our 76ers Now community. Bold prediction number 2. Even though Daryl Morey had tweeted out that picture of himself in front of the first ever Crumble store in Utah, and he added Tobias Harris on Twitter, he trades Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine. And that is the move that is up Daryl Morey's sleeve that Brian Windhorst had referred to last week. Last 4 years for Lavine, he does not shy away from being a great scorer, and his biggest strength is putting the ball in the cup, and he does that at a very elite level. Still at this point, one of the finer athletes in the NBA, a guy who has pogo sticks for legs, dribble isolation, dribble drive, finishing around the rim, shooting the ball from downtown. He can do it all. In the last 3 years, he has not shot lower than 37.5% from three-point range. A much better scorer, much better playmaker than Tobias Harris, but you would certainly lose some defense in trading away Toby for Zach Lavine unless Nick Nurse can get him engaged there. Because in the Olympics a couple of summers ago, Lavine actually played some pretty solid defense in that international showing. Advanced shooting numbers here for Lavine. On catch-and-shoot threes last year, 41.5%. Pull-up three-pointer, surprisingly low at 34%. One of the best finishers, though, especially when you factor in the volume, 10 feet and in, because he has good touch and very good athleticism to finish in traffic. Almost 63%, 10 feet and in, overall ranking there among those categories, coming in at 9th. Then here's my trade idea to land Zach Lavine. Bulls get Tobias Harris, and they want to take on an expiring contract here. They want to see what this team is made of. And if they don't play well this year, they can move off Harris after this year. If he plays well, they re-sign him on a fraction of the price at damn near $40 million. Thank you, Elton Brand. DeAnthony Melton also included in that trade, and then a 2030 first-round pick. You have to give up some draft capital as well to net Lavine, who definitely, in my opinion, is the better player as compared to Harris. So if you were to pick one to be on the Sixers roster for this upcoming season, who are you going with here? ZL for Lavine, TH for Tobias Harris. Bold prediction number 3. I think Paul Reed going to start at the 4. You're giving him that 3-year, $23 million contract. He's shown some moments of growth in his first 3 years in the NBA, and Nick Nurse does a really good job of developing players like this, and I think he's really going to be able to develop B-Ball Paul out the mud. First 3 years, barely played year 1, played a little bit more in year 2, and then in year 3, down the stretch, that's when he finally earned the trust of Doc Rivers. I had an issue with Doc Rivers not playing a lot of young players, a.k.a. Glenn Rivers. Can't call him Doc any longer. 4 points per game, almost 4 rebounds, 11 minutes per night. I think his minutes double this year. He ends up starting, and why I think Reed is intriguing, he's a homegrown developmental player who's shown signs of growth. I think anytime you can identify a talent like this and then develop him, it's always something that looks good for your organization. And the fact that the Sixers have lost to Charles Bassey and Isaiah Joe, who were under their ceiling inside their building, is frustrating for Sixers fans because they are cost-controlled assets. Reed can also rim protect and rim run. He's a long athlete who's an active defender. And in today's switching NBA, he can guard on some of those switches and also thrive on some of the drop coverage. He has length to make up for some of that space to get his hand in the eye of a shooter, can thrive as a roll man. We've seen that, taking some passes off that pick and roll, and ideally, he could play the 4, he could play the 5. And can he develop a three-point shot? Because at the G League level, 24 total games with the Delaware Bluecoats, his numbers were insane. 22 points per game, almost 12 rebounds. But what I want to focus on here, not just the defensive ability, almost 2 steals, almost 2 blocks, 43% on threes on almost 4 3-point attempts per game in those 24 games. That is a large enough sample size here. Now, does he shrivel under the bright lights of playing in front of 20,000 instead of a lot of empty gyms like he did at the G League level? Maybe. But can you boost his confidence with better coaching And now that he's got the bag, will he be more willing to shoot the rock because he's not worrying about damaging his value or worrying about getting benched? Hopefully, because if he could be that stretch 4, that's a nice little element for the Sixers offense. Bold prediction number 4. Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be an all-star this year. I think that he is a blossoming superstar in this league, and I think this is the year where he finally becomes an all-star. You look at what he's done in his first 3 years since being that first-round pick out of Kentucky, falling to the Sixers thanks to Mike Muscala hitting that 3 in the NBA bubble to convert the pick. The Sixers finally lucked out in the draft, and they hit on a first-round draft pick. Year 1, you saw the flashes. Lightning quick going to the rim. But coming out of Kentucky, a lot of people didn't think that he could shoot the three-pointer. Year 2, though, he goes up from 30% from 3 to 42.7, and he doubles his points per game, and his field goal percentage goes up. And then in year 3, his junior season, 20.3 points per game, 48% from the field, north of 43% on his three-point attempts. He was one of the more efficient players, 10 feet and in, because of that really good floater. If he can add a little bit of bulk to his game, maybe he can be Joel Embiid's Jamal Murray type of player. And what's interesting is that Maxey's growth in his first 3 years has been better than what Jamal Murray did in his first 3 years. I'm talking year 4 breakout for Maxey, and he is an all-star this year. Last bold prediction. Jaden Springer going to earn pretty valuable minutes for the Sixers team. I have never been a massive Jaden Springer guy. I wasn't sure that the offensive game was going to translate from Tennessee to Philly. While he's a good vertical leaper, he's not the greatest athlete on the offensive end. He looks slow when he's dribbling the basketball and is methodical with his movements. But can he use that body to his advantage on the offensive end? Can he continue like he's done so far in the Summer League to hit three-pointers at a pretty decent clip? And most importantly, can he give you really good defense? Now, DeAnthony Melton might step in his way, but if Jaden Springer can kind of give you what Melton gives you as well, that's a good backup guard rotation of 2 players who can play some solid defense and lock down the opposition. So my Sixers bold predictions here: James Harden returns, Daryl Morey trades Tobias Harris for Zach Lavine, Paul Reed will start at the 4, Tyrese Maxey going to be an all-star, and Jaden Springer will have consistent rotation minutes. Don't shy away from getting down into that comment section here. What is your bold Sixers prediction? Have some fun with it, get creative, and be bold about it right now on 76ers Now.